It's Sunday night. It's late. And I'm somewhere in Accra. I'm here to interview a man who spent last night in police custody. But before that, let me tell you a story. On Saturday evening, a group of Ghanaians gathered at the Independence Arch to celebrate the life of George Floyd, the African-American who was killed by police, to celebrate his life in a vigil. Soon after they arrived at the Independence Arch, the police arrived too. They insisted that this gathering was unlawful and proceeded to arrest their leader. The group started to agitate for the release of this leader. Amidst their chants, we all saw what ensued next in the videos that are on social media.
Assemble. We have the notice of demonstration which we presented to them on the panel of this one.
So right now the police is arresting him, the leader of the protest in Ghana. Is being arrested by Ghana police right now. The Ghana police is arresting him for fighting for Black lives. Stop arresting us! Stop! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! This is what's happening in Africa! Oh my God! 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 Oh my God!
Ernesto Yeboah is the leader who was arrested last night and spent the night in police custody. It's been about 24 hours since that arrest, and he now agrees to speak to us about his ordeal. Ernesto, thank you.
Welcome.
How are you feeling?
Well, I'm okay. I'm all right.
I've got to say, normally you are a rather mild-mannered gentleman, but I see how you come alive in the middle of a demonstration. When there's a fight, it seems you come alive.
Absolutely.
The Economic Fighters League, that's your organization, that's the organization that arranged the vigil last night. Already I'm seeing on social media lots and lots of condemnation of your actions. Tell us, why did you decide to take up this fight in the name of George Floyd?
Okay, many thanks and greetings to all your wonderful viewers and listeners. One of the things that we considered keenly in jumping onto this Black Lives Matter issue had to do with the fact that we also looked at our own conditions, reflected on our own situation. Talk about the likes of Ahmed Swale, your colleague journalist, who was shot and killed in this country. And yet, to date, not a single report or investigative, document out on who is involved.
Ernesto, I know you normally to be a rather mild-mannered gentleman, but when there's a fight, it seems you come alive. Tell me about that. I mean, the Economic Fighters League, that's your organization. You organized this vigil. Why, though? Why did you care about this George Floyd issue?
Well, thank you very much, Kojo. I think we, upon reflection, realized that we share many similarities with our brothers and sisters in America whose lives are under constant threat and who are killed with impunity and all of that. Because we look back in our own country and we have the likes of Ahmed Swale, your own colleague, journalist, who was shot and killed in broad daylight, and yet no investigative reports out there from the police or any official quarters. You have the likes of Eric Ofuchu, who was shot and killed by a military armed officer who was there to protect him, ironically. We have the Tardy girls. I mean, so all of these reflections brought us to that conclusion that we cannot sit aloof and not add our voice or not see the linkage when our black brothers and sisters are racially abused and maltreated in China, in Europe, in the United States of America, it will be foolhardy of us to think that this black skin would be respected simply because it is coming from Africa and not from the United States of America. So this is one of the few reflections that we did to arrive at that conclusion.
Now, when I think of the name Economic Fighters League, I don't immediately think of issues like this. I think of economics.
Yeah.
You know, I think of issues to do with the economy and economics of being Ghanaian. So, is this part of your mandate? What exactly is the mandate of the Economic Fighters League? What are you about?
Absolutely. There's been an attempt over the years to take economics out of the streets understanding that people should actually have of economics. Economics is about us, it's about our survival. So if you can't survive in terms of where the next food is going to come from, where your shelter is going to be, and basic things like that, then you are not economically free. But we would often play it up there into the GDPs, per capita income, and all the blah, blah, blah. That loses its meaning and essence for ordinary people. So what we are doing is to bring the meaning back to the people, that when we say economics, it's actually about you, it's about your life, it's about your well-being, it's about whether you are surviving or you are dying.
You are a league of economic fighters.
Absolutely.
Who are you fighting?
We are fighting for the people, we are fighting for ourselves. We are fighting a system. And the reason why we find it important to, as it were, fight a system and to dismantle it is to be able to create opportunities for all of us. We do not want to focus energies fighting personalities, because personalities, yes, may have their own idiosyncrasies and all of that. That's not what we are looking at. We are looking at the system and how it is structured. And currently the system as we have here in Ghana is one that is structured to, as it were, serve the inordinate needs and wants or luxuries of the few, as opposed to the necessities of all. So this is a systemic structure we are trying to dismantle.
So the system decided that what you and your comrades were doing on Saturday night was unlawful. So they swooped down and arrested you. First of all, were you there lawfully? Had you gone through the correct processes in order for such a gathering to happen, especially in these COVID-19 times?
Absolutely, Kwejo. And two most important considerations we made were on the EI 64 and then the Public Order Act. And as you are already aware, I mean, this is not the first time we are seeking to organize an event like that, which demands a notification to the police. And so we did all of that. We notified the police 6 days, even though the Constitution states 5 days. So we gave them 6 clear day notice, hoping to hear from them if they had any reservations with our planned activity. We did not hear from them. But I'm a bit surprised. I mean, the posture that the police or the state appears to be taking, especially given that it has a precedent that once upon a time went to the Supreme Court, I mean, together with the MPP, and secured a ruling against, I mean, the IGP, or more or less, I mean, an interpretation of sort that you did not need the permission of the police to demonstrate. All you needed was to notify the police and you are good to go. So to be told that our assemblage was unlawful, I mean, came to me with, I mean, quite a, it was a surprise to me.
Now, we've seen on social media a letter dated the 1st of June, written by the Economic Fighters League, notifying the police. Who did you submit this letter to?
Well, the letter was submitted to the IGP's office, and then the Minister of Interior was copied. The Minister of Foreign Affairs was also copied.
Do you know the specific individuals who took receipt of these letters in the various
letters
departments?
I am unable to say.
Right. Because that same
But the police have actually confirmed receipt of
your letter?
Of the notice. I mean, there have been some public proclamations to that effect by the police themselves.
That same day, the police also wrote a letter stating that they had heard of your gathering and they discouraged the open invitation because of the directives from the president contained in the executive instrument regarding public gatherings. So they wrote specifically to address that, saying that they didn't want to encourage people to attend this event because they were not aware of it.
No, that wasn't a letter they were addressing. I think that is in respect to a faceless public notice that was issued that all black people should gather at the Kwame Nkrumah Circle and march to the American Embassy. I think that's the letter I read from the police PRO, Efia Tingi, right. Discouraging the public, I mean, about such, how do you call it, gatherings. Beyond that, we formally, I mean, issued the police with a notification of our event, planned event, which is a vigil. It's supposed to be very peaceful, and even the way everything was organized, we had our ushers on standby. Nobody could enter the space if he or she had not been hand sanitized. If you didn't have a mask, we actually went out of our way to give you one. So all of these were done. It was supposed to be a very solemn, introspective, I mean, evening where black people in Ghana, I mean, people of all African, how do you call it, origins in this country have assembled to, as it were, do some introspection, some reflection, and then maybe say a prayer or two, and then say with one voice that black lives indeed matters. Whilst that is going on, we intended to be projecting on the walls. I mean, we would show that of Floyd, but then we would also show the faces of other black people whose lives, I mean, had been taken with, I mean, similar impunity and injustice as was seen in that of Floyd. So this was all that we were, I mean, doing, and we explained everything in that letter to the police. That's why we are quite surprised, I mean, how they have reacted in
now,
in
the president's executive instrument, and in fact the directives that he announced when he lifted some of the restrictions in his last address, he actually said that political activities, including demonstrations and so forth, could go on as long as there were less than 100 people present.
Absolutely.
Did you have less than 100 people present at your vigil?
Well, we did. I mean, as you may have seen in the footages, I mean, we're not more than 60. And so that in itself should give you the nature of our planning and how we intended to. And besides, I mean, it's an open space, it's a huge space. So even if we're going to be more than 100, and we're not, even if we're going to be more than 100, well-trained ushers were going to ensure that the protocols were still observed, I mean, in that regard. So we're even, I mean, prepared for the worst, I mean, if you put it. But thankfully, it was just a few number of people, numbering less than 60.
How can you guarantee social distancing at a vigil? How were your ushers going to ensure that people stay at least 6 feet apart from each other, including they themselves, the ushers, from the people they are trying to usher?
Absolutely, and I get it. And you would see in some of the videos how the people who had come to vigil were socially distant, and it took our ushers to be telling the police to respect the COVID-19, protocols. So if there was any group of people with a misunderstanding in observing these protocols, it wasn't us, it was the police, it was the army, it was the officials who had come with the intention of dislodging a lawful assemblage, because our assemblage was lawful.
Tell us about your arrest.
Well, I was kidnapped from the space. I say kidnapped.
Why do you say kidnapped?
Because there was no warrant of arrest. There was no reason for my being taken away. So, it starts from there.
Were your rights read to you? Your Miranda rights?
There was nothing. They simply asked, who is the leader of the Economic Fighters League? I said, it's me. They said, okay, we need you at the ministry's police station. And of course, this is a program we have committed so much effort, so much time. If you checked Twitter, we're #1 on Twitter almost the whole day. So we didn't want to mar, the event for the importance that the country was according it. And therefore, I felt, okay, if the police wants me, I would rather go than have this event destroyed or disrupted. So I joined them to the ministry's police station. And then in about 30 minutes time, I was relocated to the Accra, the district police station opposite the Cocoa Board. So that's where I was taken to. Now, I wouldn't even talk about the inhuman or disparaging conditions that the police officers themselves, work under, and then the cell conditions and all of that. But then I was welcomed to sit on a bench behind the counter, what they call the counter back. And as I sat, the police were very civil. I must confess, they were very civil. We had very interesting conversations, as well as that with the cellmates, who were also there.
What did you talk about?
Generally about the system, about how to improve things in the country and all of that. But what I also found very interesting was the fact that they themselves didn't know why, or they didn't tell me why I had been brought there. So I was asking, why have I been brought here? They're like, Master say, instructions from above says, that kind of. So we left that terrain and then started engaging on a very different end.
So how long were you in police custody?
I was there for about 14 hours. And all these time that I sat, nobody, told me what offense or what has brought me there. Nobody would, come to interrogate me over anything.
So you were not questioned?
I wasn't questioned. It was just this morning, somewhere around 10, that some charges were placed, including the fact that they said I didn't notify the police, which is false, and that the EI 64 protocols or stipulations were also not followed. As to exactly which stipulations were not followed, they wouldn't say. So I gave my statement in the presence of my counsel. In fact, there are two of them, lawyer Xavier Sosu and lawyer Francis Ontoyin. So I gave my statement, and then a bail was sought.
So you were charged?
I was charged.
With what?
With, the two offenses. And then bailed with a surety of 100,000 Ghana cedis.
So that night, the whole night that you were in police custody, they didn't question you?
No.
They didn't charge you till the following morning?
Yes.
Did you sleep?
No, I didn't. And it was quite interesting for me, as I sat there, because it was such an engaging moment for me between myself and the cellmates, asking them about what has brought them there and a number of things. One of the things that came very strong for me was the heightened injustice that they felt. Some of them had already been granted bail by the courts and were still being held by the police, and they spoke against it with, passion. Some were also telling me about how economic injustice forced them to commit crime. And there was this guy who was telling me he stole 1,000 Ghana cedis, and he's been there for close to 6 years.
6 nights?
6 years.
6 years?
Exactly.
In that cell?
In that cell.
At that police station?
At that police station.
Has he been to court?
Well, he doesn't say. But then I told him that once I'm out of the place, I'll come back to follow on.
Do you feel that you've been a victim of police brutality?
Well, I wouldn't personalize it. I think this is the story of everyday people in our country. And as I listened to my colleague cellmates, I noticed that something has to be done. But many of them feel inhibited from doing that because of a lack of education or just a little of it. And those of us who equally have education also maybe lack the confidence or the other, accompanying environments that could make us fight for, justice in our society. So I told them that we needed to team up in order to bring this unjust system down and resurrect a new one that would cater for the needs of all and not just a few.
So now you intend to take down the system. Tell me about that. What exactly do you mean?
Well, we intend to do that by politically educating our people. And I'm sure you, being the media man that you are, and with all the experience you have, know the height of polarism that the nation faces. Almost every issue that comes up has to take either sides of the pendulum, or else it is not worth discussing. Now, our job is to organize the education process such that people begin to understand that when you say politics, it's not just MPP, NDC. Politics is about you, it's about survival, it's about your well-being. So they can talk all they want. If at the end of the day you are still struggling to meet ends meet, you are unable to cater for your health needs and stuff like that, then you need to be able to say it as it is to those whose duty it is to make you comfortable. So this is that type of political education that hasn't accompanied the 1992 Constitution that promised economic freedom, in our lifetime.
After you were arrested, the other members of your group clashed with the police. Tell me about, you were not there clearly, but tell me, since your release, what have you learned of that?
Well, I don't know of a clash. What I know was is an assault and an attempt by the police to intimidate and to use open firearms on an unarmed crowd of people who were simply seeking to seek my freedom.
Are you saying the police opened fire on the crowd?
Yes, the police did. They, fired some, gunshots. I don't know where it went, but thankfully nobody was injured, nobody was hurt. And I feel it was unnecessary. It's also quite an irony that at the time we are protesting injustice, especially ones being committed by the institutions of states such as the police, as we've seen in the United States. It's a police officer who committed that dastardly act. And then we see it right here, playing out in our faces. So what yesterday brought about was the fact that black lives don't matter in this country. And it is only we, the people, who can make it matter.
But we're almost all blacks in this country, so if black lives don't matter, whose life matters?
It would look as though the political class have barricaded themselves from the injustices that ordinary black people, face. And that's why it was interesting that the height of the pandemic all over the world, COVID-19 and all of that, messages that kept coming was the fact that if it happened just here in Ghana and it wasn't the case in America or in Europe, these leaders would have abandoned us and gone to these countries to seek medical care or stuff like that. But once the whole world was contained, they had to be here. And even that, you see what they did. They converted certain abandoned hospitals and spaces as exclusive spaces for their well-being and treatment when it comes to their health. So we see that more and more the political class in this country, comprising the pendulum, do not really feel other lives apart from theirs and their family members matters. And that is why black lives actually matters.
Now, as a leader of this group, we've seen some of the images of some of your group members. One of them had a slash to the elbow and so forth. As a result of this Saturday night event, as a leader of this group, how does that make you feel?
Well, it breaks my heart that we organize an event that is meant to be peaceful, and then from nowhere, those we expected would maintain that peace, would rather come and cause so much commotion to disrupt the event and to endanger the very people who had converged to vigil. So it's unfortunate. We've met some of the victims, and they are undergoing care. We hope that it doesn't escalate, and we want to assure the general public that our events are not always like this. When we organized the blood donation to save our pregnant mothers at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, I mean, it wasn't violent. Nobody came to disrupt that event. In this COVID-19 season, when we went out to the community to distribute food to the poor and vulnerable, the police were not there to cause mayhem. So we want to assure them that we're a peaceful organization, we're a non-violent organization, we don't believe in violence. What the police did is condemnable, and that is why we must all stick up our voices and our necks in condemning them, openly and unequivocally, because it shouldn't repeat itself. We've come too long a way to be seeing some of these things, replicate or come up in our headlines and all of that. We have left that primitive era. I think we're in the 21st century, and it must reflect on us.
How many of the attendees were injured?
So far we know of about 2. If there were any other, it hasn't come to my notice yet. But we are still in it. So whatever happens, I'm sure we would be able to respond to the situation appropriately.
Assemble, we have the notice of demonstration which we presented to them on the 1st of this month.
So right now the police is arresting him, the leader of the protest in Ghana. Is being arrested by Ghana police right now. The Ghana police is arresting him for fighting for Black lives. Stop arresting us! Stop! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! This is what's happening in Africa! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!